For the first time since the infamous UFC 223 Media Day bus attack, Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov came face-to-face Thursday night in New York City. Sat on the same dais for a UFC 229 press conference just blocks from here at Radio City Music Hall. And the experience, Chuck Mindenhall, was almost as eclectic as a late summer night in Times Square. And that's where we're sitting right now on Thursday night. My name is Marc Raimondi here for MMAfighting.com, here with the man in the hat. You know him, Chuck Mindenhall. Just a few minutes ago, the UFC 229 press conference, the first one, happened just a few blocks away from here. Chuck, you've had time to digest now what happened, all of the zaniness between McGregor and Nurmagomedov. What is your immediate takeaways from this first press conference?
I'll tell you what, it's very strange because you're sitting there looking at this vast cathedral that is not filled, right? You're just looking at just empty seats, and these two guys come out here and they start to argue right off the bat, Conor McGregor being the main antagonist in the situation. And you are used to, whenever he starts to get loud and you're used to him bringing in a certain amount of that energy from the crowd, and it wasn't there. So it took a good 10 minutes for me, at least, to wrap my head around, like, this is bizarre. It almost felt like we were doing a dry run or some kind of, like, you know, like a TV show or something. It did not have the feel of an actual press conference. Until Conor really brought the energy focus to him and made it very personal. And as soon as that started to kind of take hold, you got past the fact that there wasn't like this riotous, ovation behind him between everyone. No song breaking out, no fights, no nothing like that. So I kind of missed it because those types of everything we've seen with Conor McGregor, that kind of energy just feeds the situation. So it took a few minutes for it to seem like a real press conference for me.
The first thing that Conor McGregor said, which was to my question, which is not answering my question, was this press conference should have been in front of the fans. Yeah. There should have been fans there. Why are there no fans? In hindsight now, looking back, because there were some moments where things could have become a little bit unhinged between McGregor and Khabib. Was it the right move to keep only the media at this presser, or do you think that there should have been fans there?
I mean, Dana says that it was the right move, slam dunk, but in my mind, you're like, nope, it's just the opposite. I mean, I like to go into a situation, let's put it this way. What was the anticipation of any kind of McGregor fight? It was like, what form would we see him? What tack would he take? How personal would he make it? And how big would the fan turnout be? Those were all like, big features into something like this. And this was the right setup, but it just didn't have, it had just such a vacuous feel to it. There was not much, there wasn't a lot of energy to it. You could hear, chuckles from the media and things like that. Just the weirdest kind of atmosphere you would expect for a big fight for the first time they come together. But like I said, Conor McGregor, it's actually a feat when you think about it that he kind of caused the stir that he did, and was still able to add that energy himself without pulling from a crowd, without pulling from his Irishman this time. It's a credit to his ability to sell a fight. I agree with Dana White on that front, man. I'm sold that he is probably the most masterful psychological dealing guy we've seen in the UFC. Certainly, you put him on the Muhammad Ali level. I know that always seems like hyperbole, but I honestly think I would put him there. I really do. I've watched tons of the Ali stuff, and after seeing Conor McGregor just do this again and again and really know his homework and just go in on so many different levels, I put him right there with him, man. I really do.
I want to ask you about that actually, and it was a little bit like a sitcom with no laugh track. When you watch this press conference, it was like there were jokes coming, but there was no one laughing, which was kind of odd. Actually, oddly enough, right above us here in Times Square on this enormous screen.
In your face up there earlier?
I've heard from some people that are around us right now, the press conference took place here, but there was no audio, and people actually left because they were upset because they couldn't actually hear what McGregor was saying.
What a bummer. Which
is kind of interesting because we were in that room and there was no fan interaction. So the fans were out here and the press conference was in there, and never the twain shall meet. Anyway,
that's
Chuck,
very weird. Yeah.
Chuck, as you noted, the McGregor trash talk got very deep. It even ventured into geopolitical issues, some very sensitive topics about where Nurmagomedov is from in Dagestan, Chechnya, that region, Vladimir Putin, Russia. He was dropping some subtle things that even the most hardcore fans wouldn't know what he was talking about. I imagine to get in Nurmagomedov's head. What did you think of that strategy, that mental warfare strategy from McGregor?
You know, like sometimes we've seen him where he'll thrum a little bit of the personal history. He'll do something like that. This was a full-on like jangling of the nerves. Like he just jumped in, and the more personal he could make it, you could see him building his own momentum. It was almost like he pulled a file in his head, and he came to a moment where he's like, okay, I know what to give him, and he would go all in. He raised his voice. He's lunging at him, and he's bringing this stuff into it. Amazing, because obviously we know some of the stuff that's been going on with Nurmagomedov. There are connections that they're not very comfortable, you know, for the UFC and everything else, and you just don't think you'll see that in a fight promotion, to be honest. And Conor McGregor is just a different kind of guy, and I think it has to be truly bad blood. He's always such a big picture guy that I think he could do this to any guy he faces. Anybody he faces, he could find dirt and he could bring it and distribute it out to people to look at that person completely different and start to play that psychological warfare with them. But he must have truly, truly bad blood to go out Nurmagomedov the way they did, because it wasn't just once, it wasn't just twice, it was continuous, and it was almost like he was revving himself up. He couldn't get it out of himself fast enough, like the things he wanted to say to himself. Seeing that, it wasn't surprising, but it was a little bit one of those situations like, okay, this is true bad blood. This is a guy who really hates this other guy, you know.
Do you think McGregor is sitting there on his computer, glass of proper 12 whiskey, reading like Kareem Zidane's articles about the North Caucasus on Bloody Elbow? Do you think that he is actually doing this research? Because he seems to know a lot of things. He was talking about Magomedov, one of the Russian oligarchs who was helping finance Khabib allegedly, and who has, I guess, been put in jail in Russia by Vladimir Putin. He was bringing up some really inside stuff that he would only know from reading some journalism.
That's other level stuff. I mean, like, yes. I mean, I'm positive he was, and I saw a couple of the guys who've been on top of these stories talking about that. You know, clearly that he's been. Somebody has either told him to check this out, or he's just naturally knows. But you know what? I think it's his natural inclination to do his homework. I mean, even when he tore his ACL back in the day, he didn't waste away that time just kind of healing his mind and getting ready for a second run. He was attacking every single guy, and he had dirt on every single guy. It was like he knew every single, you know, he was going on social media in every single way possible that would touch a nerve.
That begs the question now, how much did any of that, if at all, affect Khabib Nurmagomedov, and could that manifest itself in the fight October 6th at UFC 229 in Las Vegas?
To be completely honest, and I've said this before about Conor McGregor, and I think it was the Jose Aldo fight, and he goes in there and smokes him in 13 seconds. I remember saying at that time, was that the one with the pool noodles and all that, like when they had Ito in there and he was training in different ways, and I thought maybe he was jumping the shark a little bit. This one had that feel, because he came in, maybe it was because there was no crowd. It was almost buffoonish at times. Like there was just moments where you're like, this is getting a little crazy, you know, just him promoting his whiskey and everything, and
it was like a giant commercial.
It was, and he's going straight in. He's going straight in. He's going straight at Khabib. He's talking over. Every time Khabib was trying to answer, he's shouting over him. He's going blah 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 blah. You know, that stuff was irritating, but I certainly don't think it was getting to Khabib Nurmagomedov. That was one thing I kept looking at. I kept looking at his face, trying to gauge. You know how these things work. You start to try to see who has a mental edge in the situations. I kept looking over at him, and he had a smile on his face as if he'd expected it, and they're very nonplussed. I mean, he's very stoical as it is, but he was very nonplussed by the whole situation. If anything, at the very end, there was a couple times where he started to raise his voice, and you saw his body language change. At the very end, he may have been a little bit affected, but overall, I don't think so, man. I think he's got a clear mind for who McGregor is, the kinds of things he might say, and he knows how to deal with it.
A few more things, Chuck. I just want to get your opinion on. Could anything be learned from what happened today at the press conference toward the actual fight? I mean, did it make you feel any way about how the fight could go?
That's a toughie.
Speaking of fight, it looks like there's one.
Yeah, there is one
about
over
to break out.
I'm sorry to be
just to our right. They're promoting their own fight.
I'm like, well, you keep talking about this fight. I'm going to watch the more immediate fight in front of me. I don't know, man, because Conor's he's just so smart. You know, he comes across like he's not in control of his emotions sometimes. We haven't seen that though in a fight. We've seen him very cool and calculated. So it's very difficult to get a gauge on what he's going to do. And I think same thing with Nurmagomedov, man. I think he's just a guy who he's going to do his game plan. I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to convince him that he should do otherwise. That he should go in there and stand and try to fight. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that you saw two guys who were pretty stuck in what they were going to do, knew what they were going to do. I did see some goading, obviously from
Let's
Conor
wrestle.
McGregor.
Let's wrestle.
Right. That's all this stuff, and Conor's like, all of a sudden attacking them. I know what you're going to do. You're going to do the double leg. He's trying to put it down like that's not a form of fighting. But of course, that's his form of fighting. So
Sure.
you try to make it sound like that's not a great idea, but in fact, that's the best idea that Khabib has. So I honestly think that you're just looking at two guys who are hell-bent on doing it their way, and that's what makes it so fun.
Yeah. I think we're gonna wrap it up here as things continue to get a little bit more intense in Times Square. It's not Khabib and McGregor, but there is a little bit of an altercation going
There's
on.
a lot of
just to our right.
12 flowing right now.
Like I said, an eclectic evening in Times Square following an eclectic press conference just a few blocks away at Radio City. For Chuck, I'm Mark. Stay tuned to MMAfighting.com for all your UFC 229 coverage. Chuck, gotta write about this one. Gotta write about this.